All right, awesome. Rikin, welcome to the show.
Hey, yeah, glad to be here.
All right, well, to kick things off, can you just go over your background, how you got there, what you do today?
Yeah, I'm actually at Komodo Health, which is a healthcare software company. I'm a product manager there, and that's how I kind of got to know you, as my ex coworker. But yeah, so currently I'm a manager for our healthcare data products. And I can go into that a little bit more, but really a lot of it is normalizing, understanding the data that we have from a clinical perspective, and putting that together in the form of data products, both for our organization and for our clients. So that's my current role. I work with a lot of engineers, which is cool because I used to be one, and now I'm on the product side, so that's been a cool experience. And then before my current role, I was actually a data scientist for the same company on the data science team on the client side, working on lots of interesting analytics projects for our different verticals in healthcare. Lots of cool situations and problems that I learned about that people are trying to solve, and got to really know what some of the interesting work that customers are doing, which has also been helpful, knowing that sort of informs how we design our products now. And then before that as well, I was a data scientist for another sort of small company in the 3D body space. Happy to talk more about that. That was also a very cool experience. So I've been like a data scientist and now a product manager. And my educational background is I am a electrical engineer. I majored in both electrical engineering in my undergrad and master's, and that's how It's a kind of a weird route how I got into data science, but yeah.
All right, awesome. So it seems like you have a pretty wide variety of different experiences. You've worked in like data science, you've worked on the product side. What are the pros and cons of both? Like, I'm curious, especially why you moved from the more technical side to the less technical side, from data science to product.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually something I think about a lot myself. Both I thought about it when I was on the data science side and, what I'm doing now. And really, I even hate to put it as like pros and cons because I think it's more just the nature of the roles. But on the data science side, it was definitely more technical. And, it really depends on what you want at the end of the day. But for me, the data science role was definitely more technical. I enjoyed learning a little bit of programming, learning about different ways you can, sort of manage data in warehouses, the tools that are used, things like that. But at the end of the day, I realized that for me, those sort of, I don't want to say cons, but they weren't necessarily things I wanted to, take on long term. And I think on the client side of my job as a data scientist, that's the part that I enjoyed more. Working with customers, working on, really interesting problems. I was more interested in sort of the domain knowledge and what I was learning about the industry and the issues that exist itself. So I realized that I was a little bit more interested in the nature of the data and less so about the tools and, the software engineering aspect of it. So the pros and cons is that I think in a data science role, you do by no means do you not need to know the data or understand the nature of the data. I think that's why data science itself is a really cool job because it combines both the engineering concepts and then you also need to learn what is the problem that you're working on. But for me, I still think that was a little less technical, a little more technical than I wanted. And I wanted something that would kind of help me dive deeper into these problems. And a lot of the product management roles that we have at the company are very much, being really deep into the data. And that's what the product manager role is, where you do need to still keep track of what tools your company is using, especially our engineering team, and what whatever it is that we actually need to build these products infrastructure wise. But for me, the most important thing again is to understand healthcare problems, understand the data, and this is where I see the pros are, where I'm getting to learn a lot about the software industry, especially when it comes to healthcare, what kind of trends there are, and then how does all the data come together? How do we have all these different entities interacting together in the healthcare industry? And that's the stuff that I'm really excited about going forward. So for me in the current role, I'm less, I guess the cons are that you don't get as much exposure to the heavy technical lifting that you do as an engineer or data scientist. But the pros for me are big, which is, understanding client use cases, feeding that information back into our products, both from a design perspective, usage perspective, and it's sort of the best of both worlds for me. So on the right level.
I want to take a step back. Now you're in a product role. You were previously in a data scientist role. Curious, how did you get into the tech industry? How did you get into data science as a field? When did you realize that? Can you walk me through your journey, whether it was, I don't know, maybe it started as a child when maybe you were interested in mathematics, or maybe it was something that developed later on, but what was this journey like to the data science space and then eventually product?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of crazy to always think about how you are where you are going back all the way to childhood, and that sort of evolution that you have over, at least for in our age group, maybe it's been 2 decades now or so. But for me, I think, it's always interesting to think about how I always kind of knew that I wanted to be on the technical side, at least at the beginning of my career. It's interesting because in college, I was both interested in healthcare as, a pre-medicine student, like a lot of us were at the time, but I also think it's interesting because you come into college as a freshman and you don't really know what you're interested in or what you really want to work on. So I came in as always, being interested in tons of different things, really. So it was kind of not so straightforward to me that I was going to be an engineer. History was actually my favorite subject in high school, but I was equally interested in math. But I ended up figuring out that some of the engineering courses I was taking were super interesting to me, and I kind of knew at that point that electrical engineering can be very in depth. And it was helping my curiosity a lot, which is why I enjoyed it in college. I kind of knew that might not be what I might want to do long-term career-wise. And I kind of realized that, and things kind of worked out for me in grad school where we had a big data science institute. And obviously, I think anybody who is in the EE, computer engineering, computer science field gets pulled into that somehow. The most technical electrical engineers were designing hardware in college, including myself. Some of my internships got pulled into this very soft side of the whole computer science world, which is data science to me. And I found it super interesting. I was a lot of both decisions that companies are making, a lot of the software companies, a lot of the analytics companies, but also a lot of the companies that have big manufacturing, big supply chains are all driven by data. And that's what really excited me, having that opportunity to, really for data science and its concepts to be applicable to so many different industries. Everybody needs data and everybody can benefit from data. So for me, that was the most exciting part. And, I just kind of got pulled into it in grad school, worked on some interesting projects. It's even interesting how I have, at least for me, my career and the work that I've done has evolved in data science within itself, where in grad school, I started out doing machine learning and very technical data science work for the sound lab that I was working in, where we were designing, a new type of headphone to what I did at my current company, which is less technical, more analytical. And in my current role as a product manager, I still think about data. I still work with data, but it's for a different objective. So that's also been interesting, but hope that answers your question.
It does, man. I knew a lot about you, but I feel like this is all stuff I didn't actually know. That's so interesting. I didn't realize you worked in the sound lab and you did all this other stuff as well. Now, when you were in college, it seemed like data science became something that was appealing to you. And I also obviously know that you've been involved with AI for anyone. It's been something you work on the side. Really glad to have you on the team as well. You've also launched a children's book about data science. And so I'm curious, it seems like your passion extends beyond just the applications of data in industry and how data can be used in the business world and in the corporate world to increase value for businesses. And it seems like you have sort of a personal passion that's tied to the value that data and the models that are derived from them can create for society. So I'm curious, like, where does that personal attachment to this type of work come from?
Yeah, I mean, to me, ultimately, I always have really valued education and sort of spreading knowledge, as cliche as that sounds. But for me, that's super important at the end of the day. I think education is not just a means to becoming like an engineer or doctor, but it's really, I do think it teaches you a lot about the world, how to sort of live your life. I think, especially in a lot of, and the most drastic effect is where you see in like a lot of the third world countries that are getting more and more access to education. I know there's like more pressing issues than that in certain parts of the world, but for me, that is always been super important. And I think that that kind of is into this sort of I guess you can call it my side hobby or whatever I do outside of work, is helping with data literacy, data education. And, I think that's both that and then also just paying it forward, right? And I think that's where it's kind of, I guess I've just realized over the last few years that that's something I'm interested in. It's definitely also driven by a lot of people reaching out to me. It started with a blog post that I put out about how to get into data science, because for me, it was a very non-traditional journey after grad school of recruiting for jobs and not really having like a full skill set to interview with and to start my career. So I thought that, providing that information to others who might be in a similar situation would be super important. So it kind of started out with that, where people, I guess, took notice and started reaching out. And a lot of people have reached out with questions from how to get a data science job or how do I get more involved. I get a lot of questions about what are interesting conferences to go to, what are some exciting projects to do, things like that. So for me, that's also part of it. That's, I think part of it is internal. Part of it is also people have helped develop that interest in a way. And, things like AI for anyone, obviously are definitely very much part of that interest and how I kind of go about working on things on the side. And then the book that you mentioned was also another example of this, where I, that post that I wrote initially, I thought there was a lot of interesting things to go in depth about it. And it ended up being like an interesting way because it's, at the end of the day, it's a data science book for children. So, it's not the most technical book out there, and it's a really like small book, but I think it's super, super helpful. And I ended up realizing this more after we released the book, is most of our, tech population in general, and most of the people who are trying to learn about data or data science or AI have a very, very basic understanding, if any. And this isn't to say that, this is their fault or anything, but I just think that's the way of things. These are concepts that don't get talked about as much, are only getting talked about now, especially through, workshops and podcasts that you do through your organization. But I think that really, helped us design the book as a book for children. But at the end of the day, I think it's a book for everyone. Because even most adults need to start from the very basics about data and artificial intelligence, and again, that kind of tied into the whole thing that we were talking about is how I kind of go about my side hobbies and how I kind of got interested in spreading this knowledge, spreading these learnings, whatever you want to call it.
Very cool, man. I mean, I find all the work that you're doing outside of work to be very inspiring. As somebody that's obviously also passionate about data literacy, and I know how important the cause is, and so to have more folks like yourself supporting on that mission, we're so glad to have you on AI for Anyone, contributing on that cause and working on things like the children's book. I think those things are so incredibly important to get these things in the hands of children. And so, one of the things that we as an organization believe to be really important is making sure that the next generation is well aware of what technologies are, how they're going to basically change the world, and what impact that those technologies are going to have on their lives. And so part of that is also equipping them with the skills to make the most of their careers, their educational backgrounds, to sort of position themselves for success in the changing world. So practically speaking, do you have any advice for folks that are interested in following the path that you took? If somebody's watching this and saying, hey, I want to be a data scientist like Rikin, or a product manager like Rikin in the healthcare data space, what's the most important advice that you've been able to pick up during your
I think
educational
the most important
years?
advice for data science, and I think this applies to like every career or every field, is start early. The earlier you develop your interests, the earlier you work on your skills to follow those interests will be the best. I think not long ago I used to think that, like, why do I need to learn programming in school or even in like freshman year of college unless I'm doing software engineering. But I've started to realize that, like, the way of the world, how things are changing, everybody's working with data, everybody's working on computers. I think it's just super important to get started early now for kids. And I think it also depends, what stage of life you're in, what age group you're in. I think for parents, obviously try and get some exposure to programming. I think a lot more schools are offering programming courses now. And obviously AP computer science was always a subject, even in my time. And then it's also, I think it's still offered by high schools. So I think putting a lot more kids into that will help, because I think there's a lot more people, young adults, college students that are interested in that. So starting early with programming, sort of honing those skills, especially, if you're a high school student going into college or a college student going into grad school, the earlier you start, the more it'll be helpful. And then I think also having, just a general awareness, especially for college students, of what AI is, what data science is. I think there's a few things I would recommend is, if you're interested in analytics and interested in data, or even interested in machine learning, which tends to be less the case because it's a little bit more advanced, but I think machine learning is becoming even more accessible to both college students, and it's obviously grad students are more familiar, but maybe taking a stats class, to go along with your programming. I think those are sort of the basic fundamentals that you need to have in any data science field. The programming, I think, is the best way to build skills for data science career or related career. And same with, statistics, I think, is a good foundation for a lot of the, just the day-to-day a data scientist, all data scientists do, whether you're on the machine learning side. A lot of the concepts are ultimately math or statistics. A lot of the people who work on the softer side of data science, which is, analytical work, just sort of visualizing data, you still need to know what an average is, what a mean is, what a mode is. So those basics will always be there. And I think those are some of the things that come to mind that are not only, I think, sort of necessary if you want to get a leg up, but also are most accessible. Because a lot of times it's also hard for kids and college students to have access to the right platforms, the right courses. And I think that tends to happen because there just isn't enough offered. And sometimes it doesn't even make sense to put like freshman in college or a senior into machine learning. But I would say, those are the things for like young adults. For Another, I do want to mention a lot of people who are graduating from college or grad school who want to go into data science. Those are the people I talk to the most. And I think for them, I always say you need to have some sort of programming under your belt. So for them, it's absolutely imperative to take like a Python course. And if they're specifically going into data science, I would definitely know what like some of the types of regression are. So again, having some stats under your belt for them, I think those are the most important things. And then if you're going very technical as a machine learning, engineer or machine learning data scientist, you probably, if you did it in grad school, there's definitely a lot of online courses available now where you can pick up a lot of these machine learning concepts and even do projects with programming to sort of bring everything together is probably the most important thing. And then just like any job, translating that to interviews and practicing interviews and such.
Awesome, great advice. And which particular fields or trends are you especially excited about? Like, what is one thing that you would tell somebody that's just about to enter the workforce to maybe orient their career
I think
around?
there's
Like,
a lot of
what's something exciting
different
to
trends,
you?
and I think for me the answer changes every week or every other week, depending on what I'm reading or what's surfaced my Twitter feed or what surfaced my Apple News Plus, I guess you can say. But for me, obviously, I'm interested in healthcare, so I'm always kind of on those trends and reading about what's going on. So if you're interested in healthcare, I think it's a great place to be for data science. It's a very continues to grow big time. Sort of the health tech industry, and I think. For me, I won't go too deep, but for me, healthcare is exciting because there's a lot of different verticals of healthcare that are becoming very data and AI focused. You can think about these very, these are very fundamental like things to think about at the end of the day. Having patients direct access to care, how they can maybe see a therapist or a doctor faster. A lot of that is being optimized by data. A lot of companies are sort of intermediaries between doctors and patients. So sort of that patient-centric approach for treatments and healthcare, I think is already so big with a lot of startups working on it. And I think is gonna continue to grow, and then so that's the there's a lot of science roles there because I think data sort of drives those businesses, both from the just having the data and being a software engineer or being applying machine learning to it to optimize patient care. And then another thing within sort of the healthcare medicine space that I'm interested in is obviously my AI background. A lot of we're sort of in the I don't want to say beginning, but we're really in a really exciting time for AI based improved treatment outcomes. So a lot of like scans, detection. I think for machine learning, radiology is a pretty direct application, and a lot of companies are working not just working on that problem of detecting cancers better or detecting tumors better, but are also investing a lot of tools and resources to build better technologies. So it's a very exciting time for that sort of health. Again, that's a direct application of AI. So there's a lot of exciting stuff happening there. So that's within healthcare. And then, another thing I'm really trying to learn more about, I think, is on the manufacturing side. Like reading up on like how Tesla uses data to optimize its supply chains, things like that. I think is also super interesting. I don't know if I've read a bit recently about the transportation industry or like. Because I think obviously, or even transportation and manufacturing, wherever there's a lot of different moving pieces in like a supply chain or an end-to-end production pipeline, data is becoming more and more helpful there, where, engineers or people on the floor might not have had access to that kind of data or having more of that. And there's a lot of companies actually trying to optimize that. Purely even literally a third party company will come in and establish like a framework for or put together a product, purely software for that like manufacturing firm, and totally optimize how they track their products from, in that like pipeline, from beginning to finish. So that's another like interesting area that I've learned about. And then there's obviously like countless AI trends that you can look up. I would even suggest people to just look up AI in their blank industry, whatever they're interested in. Like I said earlier, I think there's so many applications all around, so lots to learn and lots to read about.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, so I'm gonna pivot pretty sharply here and start talking about your passion towards being a creator. I know you have a YouTube channel now, and so you're creating YouTube videos to educate folks on becoming a data scientist, how to
Yeah, I mean,
be
I think
successful
that
as a data
kind of goes hand
scientist.
in
And
hand
so,
with what we were talking about
can you tell us a
earlier
little bit more
in
about
terms
that?
of spreading data science knowledge, like some of it, like we've done through AI for anyone. I think it goes hand in hand. That kind of brings my interest both in AI and data science with just being a fan of cameras and filming. I think you are too. Filming and recording, and at the end of the day, what we've started to call over the last few years how important content creation is becoming, and how it's kind of taken over a lot of the film production, video production space. And I think that's super important because content creation is helping both us, people who are interested in creating content, do that more easily. And then also people have access to content creation, whether that be through YouTube or like Spotify podcasts or any other platform, has made it so easy for everybody to connect. And the most exciting part of this is, again, it's only a tool for us to be together. But I think at the end of the day, for me, again, the main objective is to talk about interesting things that are coming up in data science, in healthcare, in artificial intelligence. And that's kind of why I started, the channel, because I thought, what better way, because I have a lot of these conversations with individuals who are interested in data science, telling them, kind of like I answered your question about what are some of the things, an aspiring data scientist should do. I found myself repeating a lot of that to individuals, but I thought, it might be better to just put that out there for the masses. And I think YouTube is an exciting space, continues to be. So for me, that's kind of, that was sort of the impetus to put out my first video. And one of the things that I wanted to focus on, this goes more with the logistics and the business of YouTube, which is where you want to start very niche. And for me, that was being very specific on some of the data science concepts that we talk about. But I realize now I definitely need to do more production there, but I think over time, hopefully I'll expand into a lot of the other things that I want to talk about. But yeah, that's kind of, I think, and I also definitely was inspired by some of the workshops that we did for AI for anyone. I think that definitely continues to give me ideas for content.
Awesome. And we've talked about this a ton in person, but if you want to share just, why you're so bullish about the content creation space.
Just the continual growth of the internet, first and foremost. I think it's like there's no doubt, I think, in people's minds at this point that creation is the way to connect with people, whether you're looking at that from a very, like just educating people or having conversations on a certain topic that you're interested in, whether you're looking at it from that standpoint or if you're looking from it from a pure business perspective. I think it kind of serves both of those interests. I think I just think a lot of people were interested in film, so to say, or like creating videos, creating products, creating content, even back many years ago. But I think there just wasn't that accessibility, just wasn't there. I also think a lot of it's been driven by some of the platforms that are become so big in the last 10 years, like Instagram, and even and Twitter. I would say two of the biggest, I think, platforms that Twitter is more of a text-based platform, obviously, as we know, and Instagram is more visual. And I think those two have had a profound effect on how people both send and receive data and information. So I think that's sort of carried over to things like YouTube, and now there's numerous, even like Riverside, what we're recording on. All these are coming together to make it really easy for people to talk about stuff that they're interested in, whether that be me creating YouTube videos for data science, or some person video gaming, streaming like FIFA on Twitch. I think there's opportunities for anything and everything now with content creation. And I think the most important thing is like how easily, how fast, instantly you sort of reach people. I think is the most, I think the biggest factor in all of this is I think that kind of reach that people have, and like sort of that globalization of things has definitely totally reached content creation now. And I also think another thing that has definitely crossed my mind a lot in the last couple of years is people actually look at these things as a pure business now. They take it seriously. Before it was more like, oh, let me put up like a few YouTube videos or like an image, or let me be very active on Twitter, and they didn't really get anything back. It still continues to be hard to as much as people think that you can go viral, not everybody goes viral. And actually, I don't think that's what you want. You want a stable, growing base that follows you, or reads your what you write, or watches what you produce. And I think that has come very nicely with people actually being able to monetize a lot of stuff, actually be able to make money off of these things. And I think a lot of people who weren't qualified or weren't interested in jobs before, that are more interested in creating content, I think it's helped them the most. Whenever I have a day job, and I consider myself fortunate to have time to produce YouTube videos on the side, but I see a lot of people making a living off of YouTube, or making a living off of Twitch stream, where they wouldn't have had that opportunity, and in combination with actually giving people things to think about, giving people things to watch, is just wonderful.
Love it. I echo all of that. I'm super bullish on everything in the creator economy, and I think totally agree with you. I think it's just a great way to reach people, and not only that, but there's just so many tools for creating content, spreading content, for monetizing on content. And I think my advice for any content creator is, not saying I'm
Yep.
one myself, but maybe as an aspiring content creator, would be to just create as much content as possible. It's one of those things that you just get better at it over time. And I'm curious, if you have any advice as somebody that's been creating YouTube videos and other forms of content, like what's maybe the best advice that you've received so far?
Yeah, for me, I think I echo totally what you said about creating as much content as you can initially. I think that, like you said, especially on YouTube, that's the platform that I've read most about on how to succeed on YouTube. And I think the more content you create, the better it is. Actually, I contrary to a lot of things in life, I think YouTube is less, I don't want to undermine the quality aspect, but I think it's more quantity before quality for sure. If you want to succeed on YouTube, I think that's actually the algorithm, the YouTube algorithm and how it works. But I think that's necessary for a lot. I think that should be talked about more on other platforms as well, where you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna say the wrong thing, you're gonna be maybe bad at filming videos, you're gonna be maybe bad at the audio aspect of it, so the production value, you're not gonna get it right, and I in the beginning, and I myself have not completely made YouTube like a stable thing where I go and produce a week. I'm still on like a monthly cadence, maybe sometimes 2 videos a month, but I'm trying to get better at that. And the reason I need to is because I know if I actually want to grow my platform on YouTube, I really need to produce more. And I myself realized that. And initially when I was starting out, and I still consider myself a very beginner in this, but I was worried about making mistakes, and I just thought, whatever, if I, but I think people shouldn't be afraid of both on the content side, on what they're actually talking about, and also on the production side. I think just go out there. Don't go out there and just like spread false information. But if you say something wrong, if you don't, if you didn't hit the bullseye with some point that you're trying to make, I think that's okay. And if you have really bad quality, in fact, a lot of the successful YouTubers out there will tell you, just get started on your iPhone. Literally just sit and talk in front of an iPhone, and put that out there and see where you get. Do more of it, and I think you'll just grow and get better.
Love it. Love it. Well, on that note, Rikin, thank you so much for a great conversation. And we'll link all of Rikin's socials, his
Awesome.
YouTube
Thanks so much,
channel, his book in the description